Well, I think what's influenced our approach to literacy over the last 20 plus years is the research that's known as the science of reading. And there's a large body of research that has identified the key elements we need for instruction. And although that may have really just become evident to a lot of people, it's been around for a long time. When I did my Master of Education degree in the mid to late 90s, that research was around then, and it's informed everything I've done since then. So I think that's one part of what's driving literacy instruction today. The other part is what is now called structured literacy, which is an approach to classroom teaching that supports all students, and it grew out of instruction that supported students with dyslexia. Of course, all of the elements of good instruction for students with dyslexia are important for every child. And so I think those two things, having systematic, explicit instruction that builds skills sequentially so that all children grasp them and nobody misses anything, I think those are the key driving factors in education today. The Code is the Key is a series of resources designed from year 1 to year 4. And it's built around an approach called the speech to sound to print approach that was the core element in a research project called the Shine Literacy Project, which I led between 2014 and 2016. It was a research project designed and evaluated by Professor James Chapman from Massey University. And what we were evaluating is whether this particular approach made a difference to all students. So the instructional methods were built on the science of reading, what we needed to teach. We knew what we needed to teach. We used an approach that is supported by structured literacy, which was systematic, scaffolded, making sure children had all of the elements, all the skills and knowledge they need, and learned them sequentially. But we used an approach that was built around students' prior knowledge, their language knowledge, because that's what every child brings to school is language. And even though they may not be chatterboxes on the mat, you might think they don't have much to say, inside all those little brains are thousands of words that they've heard, that they understand, that they can use, and that's what we start with. So the content of the Code is the Key books is not something that I, as the author, have thought of. But, oh, that'll be a good word for someone to learn. The content comes from the children on the mat, and we get words that you would never in a million years think of using for instruction with 5-year-olds. But if they know them and if they make sense to them, then why not use them? So this research showed that this approach works for all children, regardless of their background, their ethnicity, whether English is their first language or not, whether they're a boy or a girl, whether they come from a well-resourced home or a less resourced home. It made a difference in every school that we trialled it. And the reason it made a difference is because children started with what they already knew. And that meant that we had an approach, and we use this approach to build children's knowledge from the point that they're at. So that means even though we've got the same, it looks like we've got the same instructional approach, which we have, but the learning occurs differently. Children learn from the point of their prior knowledge. So you've got some children who, for example, haven't built any phonological awareness skills. So their new learning in the lesson is around learning to clap syllables or hear rhyme. And you've got other children who have mastered that because they've had lots of practice, and their new learning is around how the code works. So one lesson, we have differentiated learning outcomes. And that's the model that sits under all of the Code is the Key resources. So when you use the Code as the Key, what you're doing is you are starting from children's prior knowledge, you're building new information that is going to be attached to what they already know. So it's highly memorable. They don't have to rote learn anything. You're building equitable learning environments. Every single child can participate in our lessons because we're asking them to think of words that they know, not think of words that we know. So we have an opportunity to engage all students. When we think about early literacy instruction, we know we have to teach phonological and phonemic awareness. We know we have to teach phonics. We know we have to teach comprehension. We know we have to build students' reading and writing skills. They're all components of effective early literacy instruction. But we don't want to teach all those things as separate programs, because we don't need to teach them as separate programs. What we want to do is build a system of understanding so that children know the purpose of learning to collapse syllables or rhyme with words, or the purpose of what a letter K or a letter C does. And if we run these instructional programs separately from each other, children learn information in isolation. So what we do with the Code is the Key is we are teaching a system for understanding how words work. And we start with a system that children have already got, which is an understanding of the spoken word. And when you think about it, phonological and phonemic awareness, they're not a program, they're a language skill. And the kids have already got language. So we start with their spoken language. We build their phonological and phonemic awareness skills from there. And then we show them how the letters of the alphabet are used in different ways. We're not going to just do one letter, one sound relationships, because that is not how English works. But in different ways, we show them that those sounds that you've just discovered make up your name, which might be Jack, J, A, and K. We can write your sounds with letters, and we can use a J for the J and an A for the A. And guess what? We put 2 letters for the K in your name. Now, children just get that. We can teach that to preschoolers. And you can teach the same little group of children. You might have a Katie who's got a K, a Jack with a CK, a Christopher who's got a CH, a Rocco who's got a double C, a Kathy who's just got a C. And you can say, wow, you've all got the sound in your names. And guess what? We use different letters to write it. That's how our code works. So kids go into learning about literacy with an understanding of how words work. And that's what we do with the Code is the Key. We start off by teaching every sound of English, not the letters of the alphabet. We need them to know the letters of the alphabet, and we cover that with key foundations. But we want them to know how to use those letters to write every sound of English, and to discover that sounds can be written differently. And the next level in year 2, we want them to know more about the diversity of the code. So we want them to know if their name is Kathy and they've remembered a C, we want them to know there's also a K and a CK and a double C. And when we get to year 3, we're going to teach them, why would Kathy have a C and Kieran have a K? So we're going to teach them the rule about C's and K's at the start of a word. And when we get to year 4, we're going to expand that into more sophisticated, if you like, knowledge about why words work the way they do. So it's a scaffolded, sequential, seamless process of starting with what children know, the spoken word, and ending up with them understanding how the written word works as well. During the Shine project, I wrote some resources for all teachers to use because I wanted everybody to teach the same way. We wanted consistency of practice. And of course, over that time, we had an amazing number of educators with their own wonderful ideas. And so we learned a lot of things. I went into classrooms and I thought, oh, that's a fantastic idea. And we immediately shared it with everybody in the project. So at the end of the project, we talked about the resources and what worked, and were there any areas people felt we should have, more instruction, etc. And based on that, the Code is the Key resources are taking everything that worked well in the Shine project and adding to it what educators said, we need more of this, and adding some of the unique and amazing strategies that teachers thought of during that time. So the lesson book is built to be easy to implement. It's 10-minute lessons only. Now you can spend longer than 10 minutes, but actually you don't need to, and you're better not to. Short, sharp and snappy means the next day you're doing it, the kids are really keen to do this again, and you want them clamoring to say, but I know more, and that's fantastic. So every sound of English, including the consecutive sounds qu and the letter X that has 2 sounds, so that makes 45 sounds we're teaching. They have 3 lessons. And the first lesson is around hearing the sound in words. So in this lesson, we've got some beautiful sound rhymes that Jill Eggleton has written. I just sent her lists of words and said, I need these words with the sound in different positions. So could you please write a rhyme that has, you know, the sound at the beginning of a word, in the middle of a word, at the end of a word. And just like that, she popped out 45 wonderful rhymes. So children learn to hear this. So it's very engaging. And again, it's about language to start with. We start with language. Then they learn to hear the sound in different positions. They learn to rhyme. They learn to clap syllables. If you look at a lesson, you'll see that they're structured in a similar way. We have it's 1 page per lesson. So every lesson you're going to do for 10 minutes, you don't have to keep thumbing through the book. It's all on 1 page. There's a list of the components that you need for the lesson so you can sort them out in advance. It tells you what skills that lesson is going to teach. It has got little tips, sometimes little orange writing in the margin is a little message from me, because I know sometimes children come up with things and you think, how do I deal with that? I mean, I don't know how to answer that. So most of those questions I've heard and I've popped in the margin. If somebody says this is how you can explain it. We've also got a little box for support for English learners, because, you know, we're a very multicultural society. Our classrooms have many different children from many different parts of the world, and they don't all speak English as their first language. And some of the sounds of English don't exist in other languages. So in that little box, it says if you have students, you know, perhaps who speak Arabic or who speak Samoan or whatever, this sound may not be familiar to them. So they may not be able to pronounce it or hear the difference between that and a similar sound. For every lesson, there is also some options for practice. We've got some practice activities that can be part of a learning centre, or as most of our Shine teachers, what they did actually is did the practice with the whole class or small groups together, so that the teacher's supporting that as well. So you can see that it's, despite the fact that there is a process that you follow for a lesson, there's a lot of flexibility in how you might follow it up with children who need more support, or children who are able to perhaps work more independently on some of the activities. So you can differentiate the kind of independent learning or support that you offer using exactly the same resources. So the first lesson is finding the sound in words. The second lesson is, it's got this little routine, which is probably what worked best through all it. Say it, hear it, find it, write it. So you say the sound, teaching the children to pronounce the sound correctly. The sound might be sh. You don't want them saying sh, you want sh. Hearing it is hearing that sound in different positions in a word. Is it at the start, at the end, in the middle? And they use the little routine of hands on head if it's at the beginning, hands on your tummy if it's in the middle, hands on your toes if it's at the end. And that was a strategy that I saw a teacher modelling one of our Shine classrooms that quickly went round everyone, and we were all doing that, and it's really effective. Finding it is, you think of the words. Has anyone got a name with the sound, and what words do you know? And we're using a class sound dictionary to record the words the children say. Now that dictionary becomes, the kids own that, because it's full of their words. And it's amazing how many times kids will go back to that dictionary and they'll say, oh, there's that word, something, I thought of that, or that was Jamie's word, or that was whatever. So they own that. And every time you build a class dictionary, every year you build it, you will have different words in there, because your children are different, their experiences are different, their language is different. So it's a completely unique resource by the end of the year. And then we've got some code cards, and this is something, we didn't have these in Shine. These are things that I built after Shine because I realised that was one of the things that people wanted more. They wanted to have graphemes more visually available to children, and that's really what the code cards do. You'll see on one side of them there is an animal. Now, when I did my master's, one of the things I looked at was using mnemonics, as a memory aid. And I know, from my own experience with children and my children, my grandchildren, all little kids love animals. It's a universal thing. All around the world, children are fascinated by animals, and they love finding out about weird and wonderful animals. So I thought, we'll have an animal that starts with every sound of English. Well, that was a bit of a challenge because there are some sounds that are very hard to find at the start of a word and some that don't exist at all. So you will find the odd animal that's not a real one in our list, but those animals become like, one teacher described this as, they'll be the little friends that kids will go to that help them remember the sounds. So on the back of the code cards, we have an animal. So we have a sheep for the sh, for example, and a U for the unicorn, and a numbat for the n. Now, who's ever heard of a numbat? A quokka for the qua. So there's all these unusual animals that kids love to find out about, and they remember them. So we want them to be able to use that as the trigger for finding a sound. So we use them on the code cards. And the other resource we use them on, and I think this is probably my favourite bit of the kit, is the sounds and words card. One single A4 card has got the ability to transform your children's writing. And the way that children write, when they know how to record sounds, they can write any word in their spoken vocabulary. So what we're wanting is to teach children to collapse syllables so they can break a 2-syllable word or 3-syllable word into syllables, and then to break syllables into sounds. And most syllables are only made up of, at the most, 4 sounds, but usually only 3. That would be the most. So as soon as children can segment a word into 3 sounds and a multisyllabic word into chunks, and they know how to write every sound of English one way, they can write any word in their spoken vocabulary. But it takes a long time to learn to write every sound of English one way. So this card, the sounds and words card, gives a child who's never met the sound of R yet in their lessons, or never met the sh sound or the sounds, they haven't met them yet in their lessons, but we can go through this card every day, and we go panther P, tiger T, kiwi K. We go through word to sound to print. Every day it takes you a minute to go through. The children have their own card. They learn those animals, and then they suddenly want to write a word like show. They went to a show, or they want to show you something, and they think, sheep, that's my sheep. So they can find the sheep box, and on the sheep box there's a grapheme they could use. Now they'll write it with an SH because it's on there, and it could be a word like chef, for example, that they were writing, which is probably not likely, but possible. And if they spell it with an SH, we don't mind, do we? We want kids to record words sound by sound. That card will allow children, that card alongside clapping syllables and segmenting words into 3 or 4 sounds, allows children to write anything that they can say. So I think that, that's probably, as I said, that's my favourite component. And then if you go, the last lesson is using the code cards and that sounds and words card to make and write words. So what we've done is we've taught them to hear the sounds and words in the first lesson. We've taught them to see the sounds and words in the next lesson. And now we're teaching them to turn that into print, to build words with the code cards and to write words with the sounds and words card. And those 3 lessons, the routines in them are repeated for every lesson, every sound of English. So children become really familiar with the process. Okay, so the other component that is really exciting for children is the sound hunt cards. So every sound has a busy, beautiful picture that you can use to build so many skills. You can build language, you can build background knowledge. Children learn the skills of scanning a piece of text, looking for a component, which is an important part of learning to read, looking for details in amongst lots of other background. And on the bottom of it, there's a very simple sentence that helps children learn to decode words. So the sentence will be made up of high frequency words or words that are decodable based on what's been taught. So you'll see the little code underneath it, a dot under a single letter, a dash under a grapheme that's made up of more than one letter. So they learn to read, look, we can read that with look for the, and we come to the word pup, and we could say, oh, we could work this word out. We've called them working out words. The P is a P, the U is an A, the P is a P. What's that word? A pup. Look for a pup and here's another working out word. C for K, A for A, P for P, cap. Look for a pup and a cap. Who can find that in the picture? And they're all busy hunting. But they've been learning to decode words one letter at a time or one grapheme at a time. And on the back of the card, we've got a series of pairs of words where they can read pup and pip. So, they have to pay attention to a change in the letters. So those are the components of the Code is the Key 1. The other thing that comes with the Code is the Key for Year 1 is a book for teachers. It's called Elevate and Evaluate. One of the key aspects of Shine, I think, that helped us make a difference to children was the professional development around looking at teacher knowledge, what teachers know about how English works, about how we should be teaching, about what research says we should be doing. And everything that I covered with teachers in those years is in this book, Elevate and Evaluate. And this is what people wanted me to repeat. Every year we had a meeting with principals and lead teachers to say, well, what PD will we do next year? And it always came back, oh, we have new teachers. They don't know what our other teachers learn. Could you do that again, please? So in that book, there is information for teachers that will help you to have a greater understanding of the English language and how to present it to children. And also there's a whole series of assessments in the back, which is the ones we use those in the Shine project, and they've all been evaluated for their reliability, and many of them have got validity studies as well, because we can see if you could do this in Year 1, you're much more likely to be a reader in Year 2. So we can match whether that assessment actually is linked to successful reading. So in the Code is the Key 1, those are the main components. When we get to the Code is the Key 2, we have similar components, the same thing, 10-minute lessons, one sound is covered with 3 lessons, 1 lesson per page, but we're now expecting children to know more about graphemes, more about the alphabetic code. And so the focus, instead of on just working with sounds and words, it's also working on graphemes. We're wanting them to read, there's a sound poem, which is longer than the rhymes, and in that poem, we've now got different graphemes, and we're expecting them to find the sound, the words that have the sound in it, and notice the graphemes. So our focus is shifting from more sound analysis and kind of exposure to the code to more code analysis. That's what our expectation is in Year 2. They'll be noticing more and more about how the code works. We've still got the class sound dictionary, but this time, instead of us giving them the code in our little magnifying glass boxes, they're expected to find the code in the words and write it in themselves. They still build their own dictionary for the year, but the expectation is that they will notice more about how the code works. Our sounds and words card is now called a sounds and spellings card, because instead of just having one grapheme in the box, they've got words with different graphemes. So they know when they're trying to spell a word, oh, it could be that or it could be this. As we move up to year 3 and 4, we have a sounds, spelling and rules card, because it's going to have little things in there. And if you're spelling, remember, if the K, if it comes up, if the comes after a long or short E or I, it's going to be spelled with a K. Little tips like that, which we've taught in the lessons, but the card is going to remind them of that. So we're basically progressing their knowledge from how words work from the structure of the spoken word to how words work from the structure of the written word to how words work from the structure of the meaning and the spelling conventions that make words look the way they do.